Hello, good morning. My name is Luke Ritter. I'm an assistant professor of history at St. Louis Community College at Forest Park and an author of a couple books. I have been thinking for a long time about immigration in the United States context, particularly in Missouri. So it was a great pleasure to review the new work of each of today's panelists. And we have three, and we're going to jump right in. So there's plenty of time for questions at the end. I plan on enforcing a maximum of 20-minute time limits for each presentation. Our first presenter today is Dr. Mike Tsichlis, an independent researcher and author based in St. Louis, Missouri. He holds a PhD in public policy with an emphasis in urban affairs from St. Louis University. He has spent 25 years documenting the historical development of the Greek immigrant community in the St. Louis region, including amassing a related archival collection and an oral history collection. He has published numerous articles and reviews, and he's currently completing a book manuscript on the lives of the Skouras brothers, three Greek immigrant siblings who came to St. Louis in 1910 and who rose to become leaders in the motion picture industry. The title of his presentation for today is Chasing the Box Office Lure, Greek Immigrants in Early St. Louis Motion Picture Theaters. All right, take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Ritter. Appreciate that. Starting in the late 19th century, a trickle of Greek immigrants began arriving in St. Louis and setting down roots. However, as the 1904 World's Fair approached, the need for workers attracted a flood of young, job-seeking Greek males to the Mound City. In February 1909, the St. Louis Republic reported with a bold headline that a, quote, Greek invasion, end quote, was underway. Between 1900 and 1910, the city's Greek-born residents grew from under 100 to more than 2,800. Many of these young Greek males found their first jobs in unskilled and semi-skilled labor, often in the hospitality and service industry, working as busboys, waiters, cooks, bartenders, bellhops, and boot blacks. But Greeks also possessed a high level of economic mobility and were characterized by numerous contemporary observers as smart, hardworking entrepreneurs. As in other American cities, Greek businesses mushroomed in St. Louis between 1900 and 1920, reaching over 250 in 1922. Mostly scattered throughout the downtown business district, including a concentration of Greek establishments near Elm and 6th Streets called Greektown. Known for opening grocery stores, confectionaries, coffee shops, barber shops, bakeries, pool halls, tailors, and of course, restaurants, some Greeks instead chose opportunities connected to the novel technology of moving pictures. The motion picture exhibition industry in America was born in the first decade of the 20th century when Thomas Edison's early moving picture projector devices brought recorded visual storytelling to the masses. Actors working in vaudeville stage shows took part in these short early movie productions. In 1903, the popularity of the first feature-length film, The Great Train Robbery, proved the medium had wide appeal. By 1905, motion picture theaters were popping up across the country. On October 17, 1906, the first standalone movie theater was opened in St. Louis by a 24-year-old Greek immigrant from Athens, John Karzan. Located in a retrofitted former tailor shop, the World's Dream Theater, as it was called, seated 120 patrons on folding chairs with standing room for another 200. Such early shotgun silent movie houses were called Nickelodeons, a name combining their 5-cent admission with odeon, the ancient Greek word for theater. The World's Dream was located on Market and 14th Streets along a 1-mile stretch to 23rd Street that became home to 8 early movie theaters, nearly all operated by Kharzan and other Greeks. This area in far west downtown also overlapped the east end of the Mill Creek Valley neighborhood, a community of Black residents and businesses, including Black-run vaudeville theaters like the Booker T. Washington. A low-income area surrounding Union Station filled with saloons, pool halls, lunch shops, and small hotels. It was known as the Bowery of St. Louis and was described by the city's police chief as so tough that, quote, an ordinary citizen was lucky to get out with the gold still in his teeth. By the early 1910s, go back. Yeah. Sorry. There we go. By the early 1910s, motion picture theaters were ubiquitous in urban built environments. In St. Louis, the city went from 1 movie house in 1906 to more than 120 in 1913. And the movie exhibition business was appealing to Greek immigrants, as it was seen as an accessible opportunity to enter a booming industry at the ground level. Anyone with modest savings, partners who added additional financial capital, and were willing to invest sweat equity required to run a successful movie house could open one. Bank loans might be needed, but were not always necessary. Of about 24 Greeks who entered the nascent movie theater business in St. Louis, 3 young brothers who arrived in the city between 1909 and 1911, they came at separate times, became especially noticeable. Charles, Spyros, and George Skouras, all under 20 years old, were compelled to leave their village 25 miles from the ancient site of Olympia when their parents' farm flooded and could no longer support 10 children. The brothers found work in downtown hotels, waiting tables and bartending, living off token pay of $1 a day plus tips. They roomed together in sparse tenement quarters, counting each day's earnings and banking savings for a future business venture. In 1914, the Skouras partnered with 3 other Greeks and invested $3,000 of savings to open a movie theater appropriately named the Olympia. The new cinema was made by merging 2 storefronts at 1420 and 1422 Market Street into a 1,100-seat house, replete with an illuminated marquee topped by a statue of a goddess-like figure supporting a lantern globe on each arm. It was across the street from the World's Dream, the first movie theater, and its much larger seating capacity likely forced St. Louis's first movie theater to close within a year. The Olympia was typical of many early movie houses. The theater began showing no-name 10-minute shorts, but the Skouras' negotiation skills soon enabled them to lease popular films featuring Charlie Chaplin and Max Sinnett's Keystone Cops. Like most silent era theaters, a live 4-piece orchestra played accompaniment. One National Theater trade publication described the Olympia as a, quote, model of neatness, equipped with, quote, the latest ideas in ventilation and air cooling, which was essential to attracting summer audiences in St. Louis. Spyros Skouras, who later rose to become president of 20th Century Fox Corporation, recalled patrons to the Olympia were of, quote, all kinds and classes, and that the theater's audiences were usually about half African American and half white, many of the latter immigrants, recent immigrants. It was generally the policy of the Skouras and other Greek theater owners to not turn away patrons because of race or impose segregated seating in their theaters. For Greek business owners, racial exclusion appeared to not make sense, as one patron's paid ticket was as good as another's. Indeed, as Greeks invested in movie theaters further out in the city, a number found opportunities running houses in predominantly black parts of town that no other prospective white theater owners might avoid. The half dozen Greek theater owners operating on Market Street quickly added to their holdings. In 1915, John Carson purchased and expanded the 900-seat new Casino Theater near 16th Street, as well as the adjacent Casino Air Dome for outdoor exhibition and the smaller Royal Theater across the street next to Union Station. In 1915, Tom James purchased a black movie house, the Retina, at Market and 20th Street. Another simply called the Movie Theater, near 23rd Street in the Mill Creek Valley neighborhood. In 1918, James bought another theater catering to black audiences 2 blocks east, named the New Comet. Anticipating redevelopment land clearance coming to Market Street, in 1927, James bought a theater called the Justimere on Finney Avenue in the Blackville neighborhood on the near north side. Built by black labor, James renamed the house the Douglas in honor of the great 19th century abolitionist, and like most of his downtown theaters, featured black stage acts as part of its daily entertainment bill. He went on to invest again in the bill, opening the Comet Theater in 1940 down the street from the Douglas, after Market Street redevelopment obliterated the row of early Greek-run movie theaters. Okay. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Other Greeks opened movie theaters in predominantly black working class areas of the city. Chris Zotos ran the Roosevelt on North Leffingwell. Hector Pasmazoglu, who served as the official counsel of the nation of Greece to St. Louis, ran the Congress Theater on Olive Street in Midtown. George Pliakos opened the Criterion Theater on Franklin Avenue, and Chris Eptham operated the Star Theater at Market and Jefferson. Meanwhile, the Skourases with Brother Spiros taking the lead, aggressively sought new theater venues with the help of local leaders and investors he came to know while tending bar at Planter's House. In particular, Judge Leo Rossier Jr. became enamored by the Skouras' incredible ambition and self-discipline, and took great interest in the brothers' plans, providing legal and business advice as well as some capital investment. With Rossier's assistance, the brothers acquired their first upscale venue, the Pageant Theater, located on Del Mar, near the neighborhoods of wealthy private streets in the city's West End. New opportunities quickly followed. In negotiations over bourbon at the home of Rose Cornelius, widow of the small theater chain, the Skouras purchased the West End Lyric, a stylish neighborhood theater described by Motion Picture World as, quote, one of the most pretentious houses in town, as well as a small downtown Lyric theater and the Lyric Sky Dome on Del Mar, whose extravagant Spanish decor earned it the title America's most beautiful open-air motion picture palace. The Skouras were ecstatic, and Spiros heralded the West End Lyric's reopening in September 1919 by flying a plane over the city and dropping 30,000 passes to matinee shows. Imagine that today. The Skouras theater empire continued its rapid growth trajectory. In March 1920, they purchased the largest movie theater in town, the 2,000-seat New Grand Central Theater on North Grand Boulevard in Midtown. By now, they stepped completely out of their ethnic zone, as their business partners were all non-Greek, and they were established St. Louis professionals. The Skouras' success attracted wide public attention as examples of the immigrant American dream. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch ran a story headlined, "Two former busboys own 9 movie theaters. Brothers who worked for $1 a day in 1914 have gross income of $775,000. Similar Horatio Alger stories appeared across the nation, touting the brothers as striking examples of, quote, the rise of the immigrant. Motion Picture World credited their success directly to Skouras, who possessed, quote, a genial disposition, a likable and radiant personality, and a seemingly unlimited willpower. And that was absolutely true of him. As their operations grew, the Skourases embraced a view that community involvement was good for the community and was good for business. Through publicized events such as free movie screenings for children from St. Louis orphanages, or holding fundraisers for schools, hospitals, or the community chest, the brothers promoted their theaters as quasi-community centers. In November 1925, the brothers entered into a partnership enabling them to operate the Missouri Theater, located in the lower levels of a 10-story office building a block south of the Grand Central Theater, a strip where several large theaters with bright neon signs were opening, and that became known as St. Louis's, quote, Great White Way. In a major move, the brothers went from operating smaller neighborhood cinemas to large deluxe theaters, featuring top quality films and stage shows. Of all St. Louis families who entered the movie exhibition business, only the Skourases grew their holdings to more than a handful. Their ability to engage non-Greek partners with more available capital and leverage their growing operations to secure additional financing for further expansion enabled them to go from running what's called naves or neighborhood theaters to managing large, elegant theaters whose richly decorative interiors appropriately earned them the designation palaces. The pinnacle of movie houses, palaces were designed by leading architectural firms and seated up to several thousand. They boasted screening films with popular studio stars in between 3 or 4 stage shows, hosted by an MC who joked, danced, or sang along with a large orchestra. Unlike the naves, the neighborhoods, palaces, whether in Midtown or downtown, attracted patrons from across the city. Meanwhile, during the 1920s, youngest brother George Skouras expanded his family's theater holdings through long-term leases with a dozen neighborhood houses, including new theaters opening in St. Louis's suburbs. Among these arrangements was a 1% interest in a new Greek-owned theater near the southwest corner of Forest Park named the High Point. Such agreements ensured the Skouras' management influence and a margin of ticket sales. For the partners, having a Skouras name on the company board ensured backing from a financial institution. The very name Skouras was now a bankable brand. In November 1925, Motion Picture Daily reported that the brothers accomplished quite a feat. Through purchases, co-ownership, or long-term leases, they held controlling interest in 28 theaters, as well as 3 yet to be built, a total of 84,460 theater seats, 42% of the St. Louis market, and most of its large first-run theaters. No other major city could claim such a theater chain with a high market share. But there was more to be done. As rivals began building motion picture palaces, the brothers erected their own, one embodying their achievements and exceeding the competition in grandeur. Located at the corner of Locust and 7th Streets downtown, it was a sight Skouras once passed by every day on his way to tending bar. The $6 million Ambassador Theater opened with great pomp on August 26, 1926. Patrons entered an exquisitely detailed Spanish Renaissance marble lobby, rising 40 feet, described by the Post-Dispatch as, quote, decoration heaped upon decoration and tint inlaid upon tints until the eye turned for relief from the sculpture, the panel, the molding, to the silver pools of the hanging ceiling. The largest of them like a lake of restless sheen. In a nod to civic pride, in the great lobby stood a gold statue of city namesake Louis IX of France. The theater's $150,000 custom Wurlitzer organ featured 4 keyboards with 93 keys and pipes ranging from a quarter-inch thick in diameter to 6 feet in diameter, and rising 32 feet high. The Skouras has hired vaudeville comic Ed Lowry to introduce the ambassador's daily string of performers, including a rising young singer-dancer named Ginger Rogers. One of Lowry's most popular acts was to mimic the 3 Skouras brothers, replete with Greek accents, and a back-and-forth argument over how a stage show should be run. Fans lined up outside as early as 9 a.m. each day for the first show. Between the Grand Central of the Missouri and the Ambassador, the brothers had a near lock on St. Louis stage entertainment. In 1929, the Skouras sold their theater empire to Warner Brothers, taking a large cash buyout and temporarily working for the Warners as paid theater executives. Heeding advice to invest their payout in equities, with terrible timing, they lost nearly everything in the October 1929 crash. With their former St. Louis theaters in receivership and movie-going declining due to the Depression, in 1933, Charles Skouras, the oldest of the brothers, was the last to leave St. Louis to regroup with his siblings for newer, bigger endeavors in New York and California. Other Greeks, however, continued operating theaters well into the 1970s, when many closed amid the onslaught of the multi-screen Cineplex. Tom James, whose commitment to the black community in the Ville earned him accolades, along with his family, continued to run the Comet Theater until 1975. To sum up, Greeks were pioneers of the movie theater industry in St. Louis in the first half of the 20th century, their influence outsizing their modest size as an immigrant group in the city. They were also able to differentiate their theater holdings based not only on their quest for profits, but also on the unique demographics, entertainment preferences, and needs of the communities they serve. Thank you.